Everybody. Welcome to the second week of the summit. It's well, it is supposed to be an important week for the United States of America. The Surgeon General said that this is the week, this is the Pearl Harbor moment for us, for our generation, or the 9/11 moment for our generation. So we have been using all this war metaphor to describe what is going on with the coronavirus, COVID-19. But in reality, if you look at who's on the front lines of this, it is the healers, it's the healthcare workers, it's the people who clean the hospitals, it's the people who stock the groceries. These are the people who are really at the front lines. And so this is not a war, really. It's more about peace. It's about waging peace. And how do you wage peace? And how do you get from a war metaphor to a peace metaphor, to talking about peace? And this is why I'm so pleased to welcome our guest today, Ben Baller. He's been waging peace for as long as I've known him. He's been waging peace for at least a decade, if not longer. He is the founder of Unity Earth. He's been connecting with people across the world, across religious boundaries, across cultural boundaries, and unifying us so that we start looking at this not as waging war, but as waging peace. Because that's what this is about. It's about how do you wage peace with nature? How do you get into a peaceful relationship with each other and with nature? And so I've seen Ben, he has incredible amount of energy. I don't know how he does this, but he organizes event after event, and I don't know where he gets the impetus for that. But he was supposed to do a march from Los Angeles to New York in September, the Caravan of Unity. And I think he's taking it online now, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, please welcome Ben Baller, and thank you so much, Ben, for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Shailesh. It's wonderful to be on with you at this very, very important time, and I'm honored to be here.
Tell us more about Unity Earth. How did you come about doing that, and what is the focus at Unity Earth?
Yeah, it's interesting. This great transformational moment that we're in has many portals on the way in. I came in through really the religion and spirituality, particularly doing exchange programs that we started running in Thailand from 2009 onwards, which I'll tell you about. But it was coming into that and really understanding or experiencing that there was a great opportunity for us to learn from each other, to learn from the incredible banquet of human traditions. And like many journeys, I guess I fell into it as much as anything else. But my wife and I ended up being on the Thai-Burma border back around 2007. We volunteered to do some teaching for a program up there called Free Schools, which was working with migrants coming from what used to be called Burma, which is now called Myanmar. And the longest running civil war, really one of the longest running civil wars in the world, been going for 50 years. And many refugees, economic refugees, were coming into Thailand. So they'd set up this program for free schooling and education, also for the hill tribes of the area. So that's why we ended up there. We thought we'd go for a year or so. Shailesh, we ended up staying nearly 7 years in the region. Our children were born in Chiang Mai Hospital, and it was an extraordinary period of our life. One of the things that we had developed was a friendship and a relationship with a local Thai Buddhist temple. This is quite a remote part of Thailand. It's not on the tourist trail, sorry. And it's a bit off the beaten track. So we were teaching English in the temple, and had developed a friendship with this younger monk who was the abbot of the temple, and noticed the tradition in Theravada, Thai Theravada tradition for men and to a certain extent women, but mostly men these days in Thailand, to take ordination as a monk. And it's pretty much a universal thing across the society that every male of my age, mid 40s to 50s, has done it at least once, if not more than once, to take full ordination into the robes and stay in the temple for 2-3 months, spending time, taking time out from life and family and study and career, and really engaging deeply in a spiritual immersion and journey, personal one, and a cultural one, and a religious one. And it struck me what a wonderful thing to do. So I had asked the abbot, Silas, if we could open this up to travelers coming from around the world, and he said yes. So in 2009, we launched Monk for a Month, and Monk for a Month, catchy name, went out on Facebook, and people started sort of getting attracted to it. And because we were in a bit of a remote area, it did help us, I think, because we attracted mostly the sincere people that came. And what I mean by that, it wasn't just kind of thrill seekers or people looking for the profile photo on their social media page. There were very serious people coming and spiritually seeking. So in 2009, people came from around the world. The global financial crisis was upon us, and we had bankers coming from Switzerland and New York all of a sudden had a lot of time on their hands. And it was an amazing experience for me because I was facilitating their experience through that program, Salvation, and got to meet incredible people who were seeking for meaning, seeking for wisdom, seeking for understanding and depth and purpose, and in a very sincere way, in the context of Thai Theravada Buddhism, and also in the context of the humanitarian work that we were doing as well. So they were coming for the spiritual immersion, if you like, and we were exposing them to really the crisis that was happening on the Thai-Myanmar border, the humanitarian crisis. So it was a combination of the social justice as well as the spiritual journey that made it so powerful for so many people. We had hundreds and hundreds of people coming through. And interestingly then, somebody sort of as a throwaway line said to me around the time we were putting up the website, they said, you should do Muslim for a month as well. And I just knew, it's like that sort of bell ringing. I just knew as soon as I heard it that it was a terrific idea to do that, because at the time of heightened Islamophobia and severe tensions and divisions between the clash of civilizations, so-called, to really allow people to have first-hand experience. And I think that's what has driven a lot of the work, is to really offer people first-hand experience, because there's so much second-hand knowledge, what we hear through the media and what other people say, and opinions of opinions of opinions. One thing the world's not short of is opinions, as we can get from today's news media. But really offering that first-hand deep dive. So 2010, Silas, we were blessed to meet the right people at the right time. And in Turkey, we launched the Muslim for a Month program. We had atheists and agnostics and Christians and Jews and many, many, many people coming and doing this program. It was a Sufi lodge in Istanbul near the Eyüp, the very holy region in the old town of Istanbul. And we went on pilgrimage to Konya, which is the mausoleum of Rumi. And Rumi was really the spiritual essence of the program. It ended up being really a Sufi experience, but very powerful. And we went to the mosque and we learned to pray and fast. And this was all part of the program of really the journey that's led eventually, after many series and many steps, to Unity Earth. We had around about that time, I attended in 2009 the Parliament of World Religions in Melbourne, here in my hometown of Melbourne. And it's amazing. I mean, the Parliament of World Religions is an amazing thing. Back then you have the Dalai Lama and you have the cardinals and you have like all sorts of different spiritual, religious pagans and all the different colors and flavors of human spirituality. It's a pretty amazing deal. But I was struck by that it got virtually no attention in the media, almost none. I mean, as soon as something goes wrong in religion, like it's really attractive to the media, and rightly so. But when there's something very good happening and something very remarkable happening, where was the attention? So if we figured that rather than just complain about it, let's try and do something about that. And so the inspiration that came was to add popular music to an interfaith, interspiritual ethos. And so the first U-Day festival we did in Chiang Mai, Thailand in 2012, which was, as everybody, December 2012 was that great moment when many activations were happening around the planet in the context of the Mayan calendar ending. And December 22, 23, 2012 was the first U-Day festival in Chiang Mai, convened by the Buddhist monks, with some indigenous representatives and interfaith representatives. But we had, Grammy-nominated reggae musicians, Pato Banton, come out and played, and
Right.
other local acts. And we just we put on a free concert in Chiang Mai around this. And so this was the first beginning of the combination of sort of spirituality and music that has become very much at the heart of Unity Earth. From that journey, and it's such an extraordinary privilege to have met so many amazing people on the journey, Sailesh. And the more people we met, the more we realized that there's an incredible opportunity to bring spiritual leaders, activists, musicians together underneath the brand. And there's a whole indigenous side to the story, which we can talk about as well. But that was, in a sense, that was the beginnings of what then became and has led to what is now Unity Earth.
Right. So Unity Earth, you have these three orbs to it, right? The ecological orb, the spiritual, and the social. So you're looking at it from the inner perspective and the relationship between humans, the relationship between humans and nature, right? So talk about how you bring those three together in Unity Earth.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think, as I said in the beginning, there are different ways people come into this conversation. But once you're in it, I think we are increasingly learning the interconnectedness of all of it. And I think that's where whole systems change. And I know you do a lot of thinking and a lot of work with whole systems change, but realizing that the spiritual and the social and the environmental are indivisible. Is something that as I said, I came into it through that particular, and other people come into it through the environmental aspect,
right.
and other people come in through social justice as their primary concern. But along the journey, we recognize that they are ultimately all part of one system, and they cannot be broken down into the constituent parts. Reductionist philosophy. Right. So. But for me, it took a long time for me to wake up to the environmental side of things. I wasn't an early advocate for that. That wasn't my entry point into it. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, it's something that's very strongly connected to the indigenous sensibilities, Sailesh. So through my father, who discovered some ancient human remains in the late 60s and early 70s, Mungo Lady and Mungo Man here in Australia, which changed our understanding completely of how long Aboriginal people have been on this continent. I've sort of grown up with that in the background of my life the whole way through, and had my dad drumming all of us 6 kids over the head, that we have something to learn from these Aboriginal people. We have lost something that they have. And for most of my life, I kind of, dismissed it as the old man's a bit crazy. But then somewhere along the line, I guess I had enough experience of meeting with Indigenous people and being in nature and having mystical experiences and awakenings. And, there's no substitute for experience.
Exactly.
Personal experience. So eventually it kind of dawned on me, the old man's right. There's something deeply mystical and powerful about the Indigenous connection to the earth. And we have lost it. And certainly from a Western, European scientific perspective, we have lost that connection to our intuition and to our innate connection to the forces of nature, to the rivers and the trees and the mountains and the sky. So that's been a big journey, a learning, a journey of discovery for me. And in that context has really been my own ecological conversion. And understanding that, no, it's not just going to fix itself, that the planet is in crisis, that we need everybody on board and on deck. And that spirituality and religion has a great role to play. And I think like any tool, it can be used for destruction, for ego, for control, for authoritarian purposes, which, serve the few. But it also has the potential to be incredibly inspirational and motivational and to offer us guidance in these times of crisis. So, I do see the confluence of spirituality and ecology and the social dimension really coming together. And you're right, they're the 3 spheres of activity within Unity Earth.
Right. See, one of the things that in our community we keep wondering why people don't see this, because it's uh, because our response so far has been, when a pandemic like this happens, how do we find the next vaccine for that pandemic, while continuing to do the same thing that caused the pandemic in the first place? So we just cannot understand why people don't see it. So do you have any insight into how we can get people to stop torturing animals unnecessarily, stop exploitation of animals? Because from an environmental perspective, it is very clear that we need to step back. We need to have some species distancing now, given the situation that we are in, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's definitely noteworthy that the current situation is is affecting the human world so dramatically as we sort of retreat into our homes, and the natural world seems to be doing well for a change and taking a breath. And dolphins are returning to the canals in Venice, and the rains and all the wonderful stories that we're hearing. So that's definitely something to reflect on. The vitality of the natural world. And, in terms of human attention and getting human attention, Silas, it's true. It's very difficult. I had a moment a couple of years ago when I was fortunate enough. I was in Europe, and I got a chance to go to Greenland, and with an elder called Uncle Angangak, and back to his homelands, and to see, the retreating ice, the glaciers in Greenland. And I have to tell you, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a very naturally optimistic person. I believe in human ingenuity. I believe in divine providence. I have a lot of faith. But being there and witnessing this retreating ice and the diminishing stories of these people that have lived there for thousands of years, and watching it just from a kilometers high ice sheet, reduced down to 60, 70 meters, and see the water just gushing off and pouring out because of climate change. It struck me then, and I think in a way that it struck a lot of people much earlier. But that sense of despair, and the sense of hopelessness, and the sense of frustration, and the sense of just the sheer madness of human behavior. So it's not an easy one of how to get people's attention and how to attract people's attention. I think you've done tremendous work and a tremendous job, and the movement protesting the animal agricultural industry, I think, is doing good work with the documentaries and the messaging and attention and awareness raising. And just, I think in the context of coronavirus, sometimes it takes something so immediate to impact people's personal lives for them to really wake up and listen. And even climate change, as dire as it was and as drastic as it was, because you still had so much media out there denying it, and through the vested interests of for-profit enterprises, really shaping opinions and shaping the conversation. For a lot of people, it just wasn't present enough. It wasn't impacting enough in our lives. And unfortunately, that's just our nature as human beings, is that we have a certain spheres that we operate in, and if they're not affected, then we don't always pay attention. So it's a very interesting challenge, and it's one through media and messaging and technology that we are going to have to figure out together. And you guys are doing a wonderful job of it. And this summit is a part of that solution.
Well, thank you so much. We are trying our best. But sometimes I also wonder, because I was watching a YouTube video of a doctor teaching people how to make good masks.
Yes.
And so he was showing how he was taking filter from an air filter that's in the home, cutting it up into pieces and making a mask out of it. And his wife was demonstrating it. And then he said, I showed how good it was by wearing it and then cooking some bacon. And I couldn't smell the bacon. And that's how I know that it's a good mask. And I said, don't you realize that when you cook bacon, you're literally doing what caused this problem in the first place? People don't get it. It's really, sometimes I wonder whether people who are well educated tend to be more prone to finding excuses, good excuses. So,
I was going to say stubborn, perhaps.
right.
Yeah.
They're very clever at finding excuses as to why they should continue.
Yes. Well, and I think we are talking about changing habits, and
Mhm.
changing habits is tough. We are creatures of habit, and there's an addiction. You can, there's an addiction to oil. There's an addiction to meat as an industry. There's an addiction to industry,
Mhm. Right.
and a reliance on that economically. So weaning ourselves off these addictions is no easy thing. I do take great hope and heart in our current crisis, and I think that climate change, as epic as it was and is, was still a bit too slow burn for majority of humanity to really wake up and get it.
Right.
So the coronavirus, in a sense, it's a little bit like, Silas, if you look at an individual's life, we all have people that we love that suffer from addiction. And, you can have a functioning addict, a functioning alcoholic, or any of the other addictions that just sort of, it's not quite bad enough yet. It's not quite bad enough yet to stimulate change. It's not quite bad enough yet for them to make that very difficult and very strong decision to change.
Right.
But then, in people's lives, you often hear from recovering addicts or people who've managed to turn their lives around. They always talk about this moment of rock bottom. When the bottom falls out, and it's beyond bad. It's literally a personal hell of sorts. And then that moment, for some people, not for all, but for some people, that is a catalyst for that transformation, which can go on to become a glorious, wonderful human life. So I just hope and pray that this collective crisis, of which coronavirus is literally maybe just the crowning moment, on top of all the other multiple crises, which you're very familiar with. Maybe this is our rock bottom as a planet, and that we can come out of this not just better, but transformed. And I think that's our hope. And so what do we need to do? We need to make different decisions. So the decisions about how we eat, how we work, how we connect, and how we interrelate. These are all the decisions that we need to make differently. And the other good and wonderful thing is that people like you, Silas, and many others that have been preparing solutions and have answers and have been forward thinking and in a way ahead of their time, even though you weren't. It's just that the rest of the world was behind. But those solutions are there for us. And I think now, if this collective crisis point that we're in, may we make different decisions. May we really change behaviors.
From your mouth to God's ears. So, what are you planning to do about the Caravan of Unity? Is it still the plan to do it in September?
That's a great question. We've been on this journey for many years, from the outback in Australia doing events, which was returning the human remains of Mungo Man, which we did in 2017, events in India, in Varanasi, in the Ethiopia and the African Union. We've been building up to this Caravan of Unity across America. As you know, just 2 months ago, we were in the Holy Land with 100 spiritual leaders, indigenous leaders, Buddhist monks, Catholic priests, spiritual people of all different colors and types. And your good friend and my good friend, Shelley Ostroff, was also part of putting that together. And the women healing water ceremony, which we did on the Sea of Galilee, and which now continues. Many wonderful things happened. And in a sense, that was very much a part of the Caravan of Unity, that 7-day journey across the Holy Land for UN World Interfaith Harmony Week. And building energy towards, as you mentioned, this US caravan from Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, a very historic, incredible cathedral of national significance, moving through California, Nevada, the Midwest. Another good friend of yours and our movement is Julie Krull in Kearney, Nebraska. Right. And then, and then collecting steam as we head towards New York for the International Day of Peace, or Peace Weekend, and designed to bring together the spiritual activists, the social activists, the environmental activists, all rising, in this sort of collective fabric of transformation. So we've been working towards that for 10 years. Where we're at with it right now is we're working as if it's going to happen. But we're also aware that nobody knows. And so we're sort of giving ourselves until about June, maybe towards the back end of June, Silas, to make final determinations. So nearly 3 months from now, we'll make our final decision. But we are planning and preparing. And I will say this: we have to allow for grace, and not in a way of arrogance, but in a way of humility. Our timing for the journey through the Holy Land was extremely fortuitous. We were able to get 100 people in and move across. And it wasn't just coronavirus. It was also recently, before we got there, General Soleimani had been assassinated. There was terrible unrest in the region. The Trump and Kushner peace plan, rightly so, upset Palestinians who had taken to the streets. So, and we were in protest. So there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty, but we're able to get through and come out the other side. And so there's some sense, Silas, that perhaps the timing of the caravan in America is going to be good. September, people may well be ready to come out and be in community and to connect and to celebrate and sing and pray together. But if not, then that absolutely, we'll take it online, just like this summit is. We'll build and we'll build until such a time as we can do something physical. So we're in the process of, surrender.
Right. I know that you had a convergence in Varanasi also last year in November, was it?
Yes, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that. I was in India in November also, reconnecting with my roots and traveling around the country, talking to people.
Yeah, India. Well, certainly one of the greatest experiences. We did a program in 2015 called the Mystic Express, which was taking people on a deep dive as much as we could with the time contained. We had 10 days to experience some of the different holy sites around Delhi, Vrindavan, home to Lord Krishna, up to Rishikesh on Ganga, and really to absorb the extraordinary energy of Indian spirituality in its multiple forms, including Sufi traditions and other incredible, colorful, vibrant, amazing India. But I'd never been to the holy city of Varanasi, and I'd heard about it. So everybody was telling me about Varanasi. But we had organized this convergence, as you rightly say. And again, it was with music and spirituality. It was with our friends, our global partners at the United Religions Initiative, the world's largest grassroots interfaith organization. And they were having their Indian National Conference, and another group called Teamwork Arts, who do a festival, many festivals around India and around the world, actually, cultural. And they have one that's called Kabira Fest, honoring the incredible, wonderful mystic poet Kabir, who spent a lot of time in Varanasi and lived there and had his life there. So the Kabira Fest is on the river, on the Ganges, and so we put together this convergence, bringing Unity Earth spiritual leaders, indigenous representatives, musicians, working with Teamwork Arts, working with the URI to put on this 3-4 day spectacular, and it was so beautiful. And not only the music on the river, but learning about Kabir and learning about his incredible universal love for God and for humanity and for the universe and for the earth and for all living creatures. A real inspiration, in a way, what Rumi was to us for the Sufi Muslim program in Turkey, Kabir was for us. And again, recognizing just how many inspirational leaders humanity has to show us the way forward into wisdom and into truth and into light. And it's not, and from every race and every nation and every time and every gender and every part of humanity, has these extraordinary visionary leaders. And it was an amazing opportunity. Not only did we go to Varanasi and have this experience, but we also went up to one of the Buddhist pilgrimage sites just north of Varanasi. My mind. Which one?
Dharamsala.
Not Dharamsala. No. Just north of Varanasi, and I'm blanking on the name. It's terrible, but up to where Buddha had his first sermon, preached his first sermon. It's one of the Sarnath. It's called Sarnath.
Mhm.
And Sarnath is just an hour north of Varanasi, but it's one of the 4 major pilgrimage sites of Buddhism. So to go there with our Tibetan Buddhist monk friends and our Thai Buddhist monk friends and a whole community to this place where Buddha started
Mhm.
his mission, the beginning of the mission of Lord Buddha, was very powerful as well. I also, one of the beautiful things I had, Silas, is I had my 10-year-old son with me, Liam. And Liam's worth a mention because Liam was the first vegetarian in our family. And I do want to share this story. When he was 3, so 7 years ago, he might have been 2. When he was 2 or 3, I think he was just 3, he asked, where does meat come from? And, we were eating sausages and bacon at that stage. And we told him where it comes from, animals, and he's never eaten meat since that day.
Awesome.
And so he was the leader. He led us as a 3-year-old
Mhm.
into vegetarianism, and then later for me into veganism. Having him with us on the journey to Varanasi as a 10-year-old boy, and he made new friends and, got to really, have an amazing experience, which was a blessing, including to Sarnath, to the Buddhist pilgrimage site. It was a wonderful convergence and a step on the road. And it was the last thing we did before we went to the Holy Land.
It reminded me of Arnold Toynbee, who said that only when the East and the West converge together, that we can solve the problems of humanity and the world.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Thank you for being the catalyst for making that happen. We are seeing it happen on the ground in real time. So
yes.
With that, are there questions from the audience, the participants? Do you want to throw that open?
Sure. I'll start with the QA box. This is from Miles. He says, first of all, prayers for all in intensive care, which now also includes the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson.
Right.
I live on the land cared for tens of thousands of years by the nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy of the Great Plains of North America. My faith is now transforming into a mashup of the Bible, the psychology of Carl Jung, and most recently, Blackfoot metaphysics. I'm interested in connecting with you, however, into a context of governance that puts the Blackfoot Confederacy first. Have you adjusted your organization, your events, and your governance to respect the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and that's UNDRIP, UNDRIP? And if so, can you give some examples?
Beautiful. What a wonderful question. And a wonderful mashup of philosophy, it sounds like. We have been, wherever we go, engaging with the local spiritual guardians is the first thing we do, whether it's here in Australia, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Turtle Island. So where we had a convergence event in New York in February 2019, and we were guided to meet with Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo Lenape people, who is a traditional owner for those lands, and to engage with him about what would he like to see, what would he like to do at the event, what would he like the event to be, what would he like to receive from the event. So that was the starting point, and this is the example. I mean, this is something that we apply everywhere. This was the example of looking at the local custodians, the traditional owners, the traditional custodians of land, engaging them in the process and understanding what's their dream, what's their vision. And that's a beautiful, beautiful process, because what we inevitably find is that the vision that these women and men are holding is far more beautiful and complete and whole and healing than anything that we could bring to a space as people who are not from that place. So it's a dialectic process and one of listening and then engaging. Chief Dwayne came and spoke at our liftoff event at United Palace up in New York, in Washington Heights. We went to his prayer grounds, which was an amazing day. The whole community. He was in the middle of a very intense law suit because a golf club was trying to take over his prayer grounds and they were winning. And it was a terrible, terrible process. And so when we asked him, and this is the beautiful thing, we said, what do you want? We've got these spiritual leaders and musicians coming from around the world to your lands. What do you want? And, he could have said anything in answer to that. And he said, bring your prayers to our prayer grounds. That was what he wanted most. And, there's been some tremendous victories that have happened since that day for the Ramapola Nape. They still need a lot more support. There's a lot more help, but it was a beautiful step and a moment. We did have a Blackfoot woman with us in the Holy Land. Martha Many Grey Horses came and again, it was educating us about the Blackfoot Confederacy and the Blackfoot spirituality is very powerful. So as we get ready to come to Turtle Island, we're engaging with Indigenous leaders, Pat McCabe, Chief Phil Lane Jr., and many others that we're meeting through that process. And we have a lot of work to do to engage traditional leaders as we go across the map. And it's something that we're very conscious of making sure that that's the first underlay of whatever else happens, is to engage the local Indigenous people from San Francisco to Nevada, right across the Midwest, Chicago, and into New York. So thank you very much for the question. And it is something that it's important for us to do the right way, to ask for permission to come to these lands, and then to seek to support the local traditional owners, and so that what's left behind is something is empowering to them. That is our intention, and it's one that we're very committed to.
Beautiful answer. Thank you. The next question is, do we think people are reluctant to quit their addiction to eating animals because even if only 5% of the world is still killing animals in wet markets or animal farming, and the rest of us are vegan, those operations can still spring a novel virus and another pandemic and infect the rest of the 95% of vegans? How do we convince people that their own singular action can and does make a difference for the better?
Question for me. It's a really tough one. I mean, in philosophy, there's a thing called the prisoner's dilemma. And I won't go through the whole thing now, but it's very much at the heart of the question. Why should I act in a good way when I have no guarantee that others will as well? And unless we all do, then we don't get the collective benefit. Wow. Just keep showing up. Keep standing up. Keep presenting the facts as best as you can, and keep leading by example. I mean, that really is the best we do. And pray. I think we need spiritual support. I don't think we're going to get there just with our own human ways. I think we do need spiritual support, and maybe this crisis is in some senses giving us some of the opportunities to really call upon the kind of spiritual support that can help move the human family collectively forward. But yeah, it's a tough question. If you're just looking at it through the eyes of reason and rationality, if we were just purely rational, self-interested creatures, I don't think there's an answer to that question. So I think that the answer to the question is, to continue showing up and to lead with, authenticity and to pray.
I have a question. Or did you want to say something on that, Salish?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The question is, how does Unity Earth incorporate veganism or spread the nonviolence to animals message? Because we know a lot of religious groups still harm animals.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. It's a good question. It's a tough question. The answer is we have to pick our battles, just like you have to pick. Anyone has to pick their battles. Unity Earth isn't first and foremost a vegan organization. If it is, it'd be pretty hard to build unity with a lot of the different groups. Our main focus is building spiritual unity. And we leave, those decisions up to each of the individuals. It's not something we are taking a strong position on. I understand and I respect, and Silas and I have had these conversations, that everyone's got their important role to play. But it's very difficult for us to build spiritual unity if we're sort of got a line in the sand about what people eat and how they eat. That's the answer to that question. We have to pick what our mission is, or maybe the mission picks us. I'm not sure how that works, but within that, I'll give you another example. It's a bit like plant medicine. Even though it's different, you could say it's not as destructive and it's not as destroying the planet. But in terms of as a potential point of division within a community, some people in the spiritual community, plant medicine is a great thing and a wonderful thing. For other people in the spiritual community, it's a bit of a turn off. So how do we, as we're trying to build a community of unity, it's hard for us to have kind of a tough line on that. And it's hard for us to come as an organization with a hard line on veganism. I personally am a vegan, and I'm a vegan mostly because of the animal industry, which I think is doing tremendous damage to the planet ecologically. And I'm happy to have that conversation with people as an individual. But Unity Earth at this stage, if we started coming out with a strong vegan message, we would have to change the very nature of our organization. And so it's a difficult one for us to walk as an organization itself.
Great. As a follow-up question, have you noticed an increase in people not harming or eating animals in your travels? Or
Oh, absolutely. I wonder if, I'm sure Silas has got probably better data than what I would have, but certainly it's a little bit like, once your antenna's up for something, you start seeing it everywhere, right? But I certainly do see anecdotally tremendous, restaurants that are opening up and companies that are, specializing in plant-based foods, and, cafes that are fully vegan in all neighborhoods around the world. There's been a tremendous transformation over 10 years, Rebecca, absolutely, which gives us great hope for the next 5 years, that can accelerate, and that the crisis can continue to accelerate that. And, the thing about tipping points is you just never know when you're going to reach it. And I think that those organizations like, Climate Healers and all the work that you're all doing, and Silas is involved in many things, but that work is having its impact. It's definitely having its impact, and the community is growing. Businesses are getting on board. That's always a good sign. When businesses, start adopting something, whether it's organic food, back 15, 20 years ago, and now you look at the chains across the world that have got organic food. Now vegan, plant-based food is really right on the edge of a tipping point, I would say. But that's just me anecdotally. I don't have the hard data that Silas would have.
But I think the Unity Earth event in Toronto was vegan, was it not? I think it was.
Oh, absolutely. So, when we do events, thank you, Silas, the vegan's a safe choice. When you've got, some people don't eat, this animal, some people won't eat that animal, some people won't eat that animal. So, yeah. And also I think vegan's just a good choice. And it's, for bringing communities together, you don't get complaints. I think so more and more and more our events are vegan for that very reason. Exactly.
Right. But also, we look at veganism not just as a dietary choice. It is a philosophy that the animals also deserve their freedom to live peacefully without being exploited unnecessarily by human beings.
Yeah. And I will add this to Rebecca's question and to your follow-up point there, that like all of us, our journey at Unity Earth is evolutionary. We're changing and adopting and moving. And as I said, we started spiritual, and the environmental, became a very important thing. And more we're realizing exactly the truth of what you just said. It's not just human unity. And all of our indigenous leaders have been saying that from the beginning. It's all our relatives, or four-legged and the winged and the and the rest. So that is a deepening understanding. I was fortunate enough just after the Holy Land to go and visit the beautiful, magnificent white lions there in Timbavati. And so look, the majesty of the animal kingdom is something that is definitely an important element and growing element within Unity Earth. It's not just for humans, it's for all of us, it's for all beings. So yeah, we're on a learning curve as well. So it's something that's, it's a learning process, I think, for all of us in this, particular transformational moment.
Great, thank you. And I believe Suzanne has a question from Facebook.
Yeah, I've been watching the Facebook feed, so thank you. There's a lot of thanks on there. And one question, I think it's maybe referring to the golf course that was taking over the prayer grounds. Are there any concrete measures which could be taken to prevent mega corporations from exploiting resources?
There was recently, just last week, a big victory for the Standing Rock community and the pipeline. So there's a tremendous example. I think that there's, the groundswell, not just the local engagement, but the national engagement and the global engagement in the cause, the righteous anger that people really demonstrated by showing up and not allowing that to happen. That's a tremendous victory, and in there's a playbook I think that all of us can take. There is a turning of the tide. Up until now, corporations have had pretty much unfettered power, but what examples like Standing Rock and others show us is power of the people. When we do show up together, we're unstoppable. So particularly with a righteous cause, maybe that's the kicker. It's got to be a righteous cause. So I think that there's great hope and inspiration from us rallying around these holy and true, just causes, and that we show up together with passion and with power and with determination and with commitment, then anything is possible.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Like, my granddaughter is part of the Akimel tribe, who are the original inhabitants of this area in Phoenix, Arizona. So they consider this mountain that's right here to be sacred to them. It's part of their creation story. And recently a highway was built right through that mountain. So they actually cut into the mountain in 3 places, just to build the highway. And it was tearing them up. Because all it required was, going an extra half a mile. So you're going to lengthen the highway by half a mile to go around the mountain. Why can't we even do that? Yeah. So we have this demand for efficiency that cuts through any other consideration. So, anyway, and I'm sure now they are all looking at what we are going through and saying, yeah, this is nature coming back to us for our arrogance.
Yes. Yeah, well, there's a huge values shift that we need to take, and that's a part of it. I mean, it is typical human to destroy a holy mountain to save 30 seconds or a minute of driving time. I mean, it's ridiculous. But hopefully this multiple crisis and the pandemic now that gives us a pause and a breath, and programs like this, and we know that all around the world, even people who weren't in the conversation 6 weeks ago are now, pricking up their ears and wondering, maybe we could do things differently. Maybe we don't have to be so busy, efficiency. Maybe it's not all about money and the economy. Maybe it's this deeper wisdom and deeper values that we're waking up to, Silash, that from now on, that can govern our decisions. At every level, the municipality and the state and the nation and the planet can be imbued with wisdom and can be governed with wisdom and with respect to nature and deep listening to, the natural world and to the spirit that is also present in the universe and inside us. And there's a lot for us to be listening to if we just stopped for long enough to hear it. And I take great hope in that.
That's beautiful, Ben. Thank you.
Ray has a comment you maybe either of you could comment on. Facing anthropocentrism, I didn't say that quite right, anthropocentrism is in everyone's path. I doubt any refuge from speciesism exists in humanity finding its humility.
Well, humanity is built on humility, right? That's the original humus. We come from that soil. That's the understanding. And so that's where I think we need to go back to our original understanding. This is why what Ben is doing by reconnecting with the indigenous communities and recognizing the wisdom in those communities and synthesizing our scientific knowledge and our factual, our rational mind with what they bring to the table.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, just glad you're here.
I think there is one from Miles in the Q&A.
Oh, yes, there is. I apologize. Let me get that one. Miles says, I listened to your video on the Toronto Convention of World Religions. It might have been you, but someone quotes a favorite U2 song of mine, Walk On. Are you a U2 fan? Have you connected with them? Any other big names? Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Toronto. And Silash was there at that meeting. It was a wonderful gathering, the Convergence, Toronto Convergence. All vegan food. That's right. That's part of the deal. But yeah, walk on. We're going to a place that has to be believed to be seen. We're packing a suitcase. That's it. We're packing a suitcase for a place. None of us has been a place that has to be believed to be seen. It's a great line. And I guess it's talking about even in the face of a tremendous adversity and, logically, like the question asked before, rationally, it's hard to see us making it. So there really is the power of faith for us to vision what the world is, even before we get there. We've got to believe it and we've got to act as if it's happening. And that's what I love about the work that you're doing. Is you're declaring this is the future of the world, and we're acting as if this is reality, and that's the kind of commitment that it takes. So yeah, well, look, I'd love to connect deeper with U2. I am a U2 fan. I'm a lifelong U2 fan. I've been to a number of their concerts. I think their music is inspirational, and we'd love to weave them in to this journey at some point in time, maybe sooner rather than later. So I think everything has its place. But thanks for the question. It's a great question.
Okay, that's all the questions I see right now.
Well, thank you so much, BJ. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Deborah, thank you for organizing this. And thank you once again, Ben, for getting up so early in the morning and joining us. Sorry that it couldn't have been more accommodating for you. But
it was a wonderful way to start the day. And and it was really delightful to be with you, Rebecca and Susan and Benjamin, Deborah and Anne and Silas. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I really, really enjoyed it. And blessings on your work. More power to everything you're doing. And certainly I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with you and looking forward to the journey ahead. It's a real blessing to be with you today.
Yeah, same to you. We come to it from different angles, but we're reaching the same destination.
Yes, amen. Amen. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Blessings.
you all. Can I ask one more question real quick of Ben? Is there a way to plug in with your organization to learn more about what you're doing, your events? Is there a way for people
Absolutely.
to attend?
I'll get a URL. It's just unity.earth/connect.
Okay.
And then people can, connect with us in multiple ways there. I'll pop that into the chat. And obviously the website unity.earth's got lots of stuff about our past events and coming events and different stuff. But if people just wanted to stay connected, they can go there and pop their details in or join our social media or all that kind of cool stuff. And we can stay connected to people. And we are coming to America, I do believe, in September to Turtle Island. And we'd love to connect with communities as we move across from the West Coast to the East Coast and really, bring groups together and rise as one collective consciousness. And love to do it with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you. We look forward to that. And so tomorrow we are going to be talking to Margot Curry and Laura Rees about farming for the planet. How do we transform from what we are doing now to a plant-based world? Join us tomorrow. And until then, be well. Thank you.